reinforcement. All right, so last class we went over the basic cycle, so the cyclical component. So day 0 to day 28, obviously this is an average. It's typical every 28 days, where in the middle, somewhere in the middle, we have ovulation will occur. So if a female cycle is 20 days, then the ovulation would occur at day 10, give or take a day, okay? All right, so last class I showed this to you, right? Let's take a look. So what starts the process of follicular development? So this is during this, all of these little tiny immature eggs. What's an immature egg called, by the way? What's the name of an immature egg? Nope. That's a mature egg. Is it oocyte? Nice job. Right. So just like in sperm, its spermatocyte is immature. What is the stem cell called? So this is before the female is born. She's going to produce lots and lots and lots of these oocytes. What's the stem cell called for eggs? Not ovum. Ovum is mature. Oogonium. Oogonium. Okay. So for sperm, the stem cell is called spermatogonium. For egg, the stem cell is called oogonium. But that is pretty much all dealt with. So we produce lots of our immature egg cells or oocytes before birth. Approximately, did I tell you how many? So approximately 500,000 eggs are produced before the female is born. Okay. What is the process that causes all those immature eggs to be produced? What is that called? So the production. Not ovulation. Ovulation is the release of a mature egg, almost mature egg. Oogenesis. Good. So this whole process technically is oogenesis, but that small process just before birth. So what stage of oogenesis occurs just before birth? It's a term we learned from biology. Mitosis. Good. Okay. So mitosis is going to occur before this stage. Okay. So we break this up into day 0 to 7. From here to here is 7 to 14. Okay. Over here is at day 14, and then this is day 14 to day 21, and then this would be at day 28. Okay. All right. So as a review, what starts? So we have these immature known as primary. I'm going to use a symbol like first degree. Oocyte. Okay. What stimulates the beginning of the development of a follicle? There needs to be a signal that tells the follicle to begin developing. Say it. Follicular FHS, which is FSH, yes. Stimulating hormone. Very good. Excellent. So we're going to have FSH. It's going to start this process. Okay. Where is FSH coming from? Sorry? Pituitary, so pit for pituitary. Okay. And then it's because of, Emma? GnRH. So GnRH is a hormone that will stimulate the pituitary to release the FSH. And then the FSH, once it travels through the blood to get to the ovaries, will start this process of follicular development. So that's where the little tiny follicle cells surrounding the oocyte begin to grow and develop. And they're going to provide support for the developing and maturation of our oocyte. Okay. Where is GnRH produced? Hypothalamus. Good. Okay, so that's hypothalamus. I'm doing some abbreviating here. Okay. No, GnRH is produced in the hypothalamus, and then GnRH tells the pituitary to release FSH. Okay, and that FSH goes to the ovary and starts follicular. So it stimulates follicular development. Okay. All right. Once we've grown quite a bit as a follicle, there's going to be another hormone that's going to jump in here. What's the other hormone that pituitary gland produces? LH. So LH is going to come along and help with this development. Okay. Once we reach what's called a secondary oocyte, secondary oocyte. Now those follicles are going to produce their own hormone. Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry. So that's going to sort of, it's like a little helper, right? It's going to help the development of the follicle, particularly in this later stage. Okay. All right. It's also going to stimulate the follicle to release a hormone. Okay, what's the name of the hormone that the follicles produce? Estrogen. Okay, so now we're going to get some estrogen playing here. So the estrogen, that's a little bit more. The estrogen is released from the follicle. Okay, and it'll actually go back to the pituitary gland. And what it will do is, we're going to go to the next stage of ovulation. 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 But we need a surge of a hormone to do that because this is pretty big business, right? So estrogen is going to communicate with the pituitary gland and tell it to secrete a whole lot of something so that way it can ovulate, and then produce this structure here. Yes? LH. So we're going to have a massive, massive, massive surge of LH. Nope. We will have a surge of estrogen. Estrogen is always produced in females, but this will just give us that extra little bump of estrogen right at this stage. So right around, is somewhere between day 7 and day 14, you'll have a bump of estrogen, but there's normally small amounts of estrogen being produced by our bodies, okay? Okay, so we're gonna have, so that extra bump of estrogen is going to produce or cause a massive surge. Is this exaggerated enough? LH, a massive surge of LH, and that will cause ovulation. And the remaining follicle cells here, so all these little follicle cells are going to start to develop, so that LH will also cause the follicle cells to turn into this corpus luteum. Okay, the corpus luteum. So this is known as the follicular phase because we're growing our follicle, growing and developing follicle. And then after ovulation, we have our luteal phase because we're growing and developing our corpus luteum. Okay. Now, can you remind me, I'm not sure how far we got. So where in this, or did we talk about what the corpus luteum produces? Progesterone. Okay, excellent. All right. So our corpus luteum is going to produce progesterone. Okay. Oops. Why am I making it a dotted line? It's inhibitory, right? So our progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum, and it's going to inhibit the release of GnRH. Okay? We don't want another egg to be released. If there's no signal going to the hypothalamus from the ovary, then the hypothalamus will assume that we need to start this process again. So this is so important. Yeah.
So what if the egg was like released prematurely?
Prematurely, then this process would start sooner. I'm sorry. No, not necessarily. I mean, so if there wasn't enough time for the follicle to develop,
just not able to be fertilized.
That's a good question. So if the egg is not, and just like with sperm, if the egg or the sperm are not mature enough, they may not be able to produce the necessary hormones to continue this process. So if the follicle is too small, like for whatever reason, who knows why, but if that follicle was ovulated or the oocyte was ovulated before the follicle developed, which would be strange because you need the estrogen for the surge of luteinizing hormone or LH for that ovulation to occur. But let's just say for whatever reason something caused the ovulation. Okay. I would be concerned because I'm gonna talk about the next step. If this follicle didn't produce enough estrogen, this estrogen is going to be essential for developing the endometrium. Why don't we hold that thought for a moment, okay? Because I want to make sure. Let me talk about this, and then let's play it out and think about it a little more. All right, that's a good question. I'm not going to forget it. Let me go to the next step, and then we can talk. Okay. Yes. Okay. Excellent question. That I will entertain right now. So the question was, how does birth control prevent birth, right? Or prevent, right, all of that. One of the main ingredients found in birth control is progesterone. So what progesterone is doing is stopping follicular development. Okay? Our bodies will still continue to produce estrogen, right? But we won't have, there won't be ovulation, okay? No, it shouldn't. Affect fertility. And there's so much research out there. It's very rare when it does affect fertility. I mean, we cannot say 100%, right? Because everybody's body is different and responds differently. But overwhelmingly, there's very low risk for infertility with birth control, right? Because all it is literally you're getting doses of progesterone, okay? And then as soon as we stop progesterone, which is a natural hormone in our body, then this process will start again. So you should be able to pretty much right after you stop the birth control, right? This will start again. Because without that progesterone, the hypothalamus will begin again. You still have a menstrual cycle. So that is a good question. I'm going to come back to that a little later. I know. And some birth, it's not a real one. So the estrogen that our bodies produce, right? So the estrogen levels will still be cyclical, okay? And let me get to the estrogen. So I'm going to answer both of your questions as far as menstrual cycle, and then fertility as far as an immature egg, okay? Are we okay here? Now, one last little thing. Estrogen will also have a small part. When you have an extra little burst of estrogen, will also kind of stop this as well, okay? All right. So we know, so I'm just going to jot down a few items right here. Okay, so we know that corpus luteum, right, is going to produce progesterone. Okay, the progesterone will have an inhibitory effect on the hypothalamus / pituitary. Okay, it's going to have an inhibitory effect there. We also know that our follicles, it's not as clear in this image, but our follicles, so the follicular cells, will produce, what do they produce again? What do follicles produce again? Estrogen, good. So it's going to produce estrogen. Okay, now in addition to developing our oocyte into mature ovum, okay, these two hormones are going to talk to the endometrial lining in the uterus. Okay? And so what that does is, and it's perfect because it's right around day 14. Okay, day 14 here. So this is day 14. And then day 21-ish right here. Well, somewhere between that, okay? So from here, the progesterone and the estrogen will be received by the uterus, and that's going to tell the uterus, hey, we just released an egg. Get ready, right? The egg is on its way. Get ready for the potential of implantation, right? And so what does a baby need, or any cell need, in order to grow and develop? Nutrients, okay? So it's going to need nutrients. So the endometrial lining of the uterus, so that's all of this in white, is going to start filling with nutrients. And where are the nutrients carried in our body? What's that? Blood, okay? So the cells of the endometrium become engorged with blood, all right? It'll be all throughout, so I'll just kind of show the lining here. It's going to become engorged with blood. It'll bring lots and lots and lots of nutrients to the body, okay? Or to the endometrium. We're going to discuss this more next week, but right in this isthmus area, so the egg will travel. So here's my little egg. So it's still considered an oocyte. So we're at our secondary oocyte. So it'll travel, and then somewhere in here, if sperm has entered into the female, then it will fertilize the female. Okay, so that's the sperm fertilizing the female, and then we'll undergo that second division. So meiosis 2 happens here. So meiosis 2 happens at this location, and we'll have a second division where one of the cells becomes a polar body, which is going to help support the growing baby, right? Potential growing baby, and the other one will be our mature ovum. Okay, so it's at this point that we have an ovum, which is a mature egg cell. With the sperm, so now you need the sperm to have that second meiosis or division. So we would have, so from here, we would have the splitting, and then so like 2 bodies. So with the splitting, we got a little tiny polar body. We talked about polar bodies yesterday. Yes. Okay. So it splits a second time, we get our mature ovum with the fertilized egg. Now, again, I'm going to get into this more tomorrow, so I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a spoiler. So that egg, so right now the sperm, the head of the sperm is sitting basically on that edge of the ovum. Okay, now an ovum. After the division, thank you. We've got that polar body, which is not going to give rise to the baby, right? The head of the sperm, the nucleus, will fuse with the nucleus of the egg, and then it's now going to be considered a zygote, okay? So that zygote will make its way down into the uterus, and it takes about anywhere from 3 to 7 days, okay, for that to happen. So that's by day 28, okay, give or take, obviously, all right? If implantation occurs, then we have what's called a pregnancy. If there's no implantation, right, then this will get sloughed off. So how does the body know that there's an implantation? This is a small structure. Our bodies don't feel that. This implanted egg secretes a hormone called little HCG. That HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone. Okay, this will get received by that corpus luteum, and then the corpus luteum will continue to produce progesterone. Okay, this is how we know that there is a pregnancy. Okay, so if the baby implanted itself, it sends this, well, zygote implants itself, it sends this hormone out. It tells the corpus luteum, hey, we have implanted ourselves, keep providing nutrients so I can keep growing, okay? If it doesn't implant itself, there's no HCG, and we have the sloughing of the endometrial lining because there's nothing telling us to keep releasing progesterone. Okay, so that's the end of it, all right? So with women who are trying to conceive a baby and they utilize the pregnancy test, what pregnancy tests look for is the presence of HCG, okay? So they look for the presence of HCG, which can get filtered within the urine, within the kidneys, okay? So it only takes, so from ovulation, day 14, okay, day 14 ovulation, it takes about 7 days to migrate to where it will be fertilized. It takes a couple more days to migrate and implant. So from ovulation to implantation, just within a few days after fertilization, you can check to see if you're pregnant. So you don't even need to wait. If you're trying to have a baby, you don't need to wait a whole month. Within the end of that cycle, before you even have your period, you should already be producing HCG. Okay? Most women will wait a month to see if they have their period, and if they miss their period, then they will go get a pregnancy test to confirm that they are indeed having a baby or not. They can, but if they do, it would just be, if it's very, very thin blood, so pink as opposed to red, that's a good indication, especially, so if you don't have all of that sloughing off, then you probably are pregnant. Again, a pregnancy test to check for the HCG is, it's pretty accurate. Okay, and if a woman wants to confirm that, then she would go to her gynecologist and have them run a test as well. But they're pretty accurate. Yes.
Can you miss your period and not be pregnant?
That is possible. You can miss your period without being pregnant, but I would be concerned. That might indicate some sort of other medical condition, something else going on. So I would be concerned with that. So you may not have released an egg, and there's a lot of like what ifs and a lot of unexplained occurrences. So our periods or our cycles, both male and female cycles, are, well, males is a little less cyclical, is definitely governed by environmental factors. So I think the other day, I don't know if it was this class or another, but there is, so for males, so the primary hormone is testosterone. There is a compound found in plastics that make up a lot of our plasticware for food storage. And when you microwave it, you heat it up, and it leaches into the food. And one of those compounds is a some sort of, I can't remember the full mechanism, but that compound will actually inhibit the production of testosterone, and therefore you'll have a much lower sperm count. They can, without it being an issue. Yes, yeah. So it could be lack of not nutrients, but your nutrients are getting diverted to other needs, and so therefore you're not going to put that energy toward having a baby. So again, a lot of environmental factors will contribute to those things. Okay, so if there's ever any question, you guys are asking some really good questions. If something, it's so important to know your normal, natural cycle. And when something's not right, you go see your physician, and then they can run a test to make sure everything is okay. And it could be just because of stress. Stress could inhibit that, right? You don't want to have a baby. You don't want to bring a baby into life if you're experiencing a lot of trauma, and I mean significant trauma. If your body is not receiving enough nutrients, while exercising, you're not storing enough fat because you're going to need that fat. If you're an athlete, you're probably going to have a much lower body fat, and you need that for your nutrients, for energy. So your body might not be ready to receive a baby and support that baby. Okay, so a lot of factors.
What about people who have like really long periods?
Everyone is different. So the average time frame for a period could be, as far as like the length of sloughing off a period, you mean like the whole bleeding part? That can be anywhere from like 3 days, so average of 3 to 5 days, but some women can go far longer, right? 7 days, 10 days, especially during their first menstrual cycle. Do you guys remember what the name was, the vocabulary? Menarche, right? MENARCHE, menarche. So sometimes girls' first period is very long, okay? So it tends to become more regular once you hit your 20s and 30s. And then when you hit your 40s and 50s, it gets weird again, and then you enter into what's called menopause, when you're no longer releasing eggs and you no longer have your period. Okay?
So how many eggs was it again? 500,000?
About 500,000 eggs, so 250 per ovary.
So do you release that many?
Probably not. There's a lot more than what's needed.
Do you release one every period or two?
One every period.
Yeah, so when you have 500,000 per period.
Right.
Which is not.
Yeah. So there's a lot more than what's needed. Absolutely. True.
So when someone gets like really old and they have a baby, that's why it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal because so like someone who's 60 years old, for instance, and that's happened before, that they would have a baby, a female would have a baby. It's rare, but they're like on that extreme version or at end of the range for menstruation. Okay, but the average age to begin menopause is right around 50. Okay, sometimes it's sooner than that, and then sometimes it's a bit later, like those instances where women in their 60s will conceive a baby. So it is a pretty big deal. They would have to be extremely healthy to be able to do that. Yeah. Okay. Questions? All right. Do you guys want to do